Good morning, guys, and welcome to the farm school. So, we are going to learn about taxonomy today. So, pronounce it with me. Taxonomy. Taxonomy. Good job. Now, my name is Miss Bree, and I am an educator, a farmer, an illustrator, a singer, a grammar nerd, very much so. But welcome to the farm school. So, the Heirloom Farm LLC, which is my farm, what I do is I try and educate both children, adults, um, even everybody in between about all the cool things that you can learn about through agriculture, which is farm related stuff. Okay? So, today we're going to learn about taxonomy. So, what is taxonomy? Taxonomy means how we arrange living things into groups. So, how we arrange things like animals, plants, humans, dogs, cats, squirrels, any of those sort of things. How do we know what kind of group they're in? Okay, how do we know that dogs are dogs? How do we know that humans are humans? How do we know that dogs are mammals? These are all things that taxonomy explains. Isn't that neat? So let's carry on. Taxonomy is the way scientists sort living things into groups. So from very, very big groups down to very, very small specific ones. So it kind of works like a grocery store, but for living things. Okay, and we're going to kind of go into that later. But just kind of think about that. All right, you know how there's like the main store, and then there's different departments, and then there's little aisles in the departments, and that helps you find things. That's how taxonomy works. So, we're taking a big idea, taxonomy, and turning it into something that's understandable for everybody, okay? Because sometimes it's hard to understand a big idea like that all at once. So we're going to break it down. Taxonomy means how we arrange living things into groups. Scientists start with a big group and then make smaller and smaller groups until they get to one single kind of living thing. Now, this big to small organization is called a hierarchical system. Can you say that with me? I know it's a big word. Hierarchical. Excellent job, guys. So, one more time, this big to small organizing is called a hierarchical system. That's right. So, remember we talked about this being similar to a grocery store? Well, here we go. So, you walk into the grocery store and see how on the left we have the fruit section, on the middle we have the vegetable department, and on the right we have the dairy department, okay? Now, we know that when we go shopping, we want to get a specific brand of goat milk, okay, for example. So we're going to go to the dairy department. We're going to go to the milk aisle. We're going to find the goat milk. And then we're going to look for that specific brand of goat milk. And then that's what you're going to buy, right? That's how we find things. You can also do this with cheese or even with fruits, vegetables, with anything else, right? That's how we find stuff. So taxonomy does the same thing with living things. It's super neat. So, whose idea was this? Like, who came up with taxonomy? Okay, because it's kind of something that you wouldn't really think about that maybe we needed, but it turns out we did. So, Carl Linnaeus was a botanist, which is somebody who studies plants, in the 18th century. So, that actually means the 1700s. But Carl Linnaeus was the botanist or the scientist who made a system to organize living things into levels. He put living things that are alike or similar into the same group. This system is still used today. Now, it does have some updates to it to make it fit better into what we're looking for. But isn't it neat that it's still used 300 plus years later? I know, it's crazy. So, we're going to tackle the 8 levels. Okay, so these are the 8 main levels in a taxonomy listing. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Keep in mind, we're going from the smallest to the biggest with our numbers. Okay, so from smallest, which is the most specific, to biggest, which is the most general. On the left here, we have a list. So 1 is species with an S. So say it with me, species. Good job, guys. Species. 2 is genus with a G, okay? But it makes a J sound in this case. So genus. Genus. That's right. And 3 is family. Starts with an F. Family. Good job, guys. And 4 is order. Starts with an O. Order. 5 is class with a C. Class. Class. That's right. 6 is phylum. Now, this one will trip you up because it starts with a P, which normally makes a P sound. But here it makes a F sound with the PH. So, phylum. Can you say that? Phylum. Phylum. Good job. 7 is kingdom with a K. Kingdom. That's right, kingdom. And 8, which is the most general or the biggest group, is called a domain with a D. So D-O-M-A-N. Domain. Great job, guys. Now, on the right, you might be wondering why there's a flying goat with a hat on and sunglasses. This is a good thing to remember. This is a way that I find is helpful to remember a list of words like the ones on the left there. Okay, 1 through 8. So this is called a mnemonic. Okay, and a mnemonic helps people remember by giving sort of an odd or silly or some sort of a connection, okay, to those words. So you'll see down below we have silly, goats, fly, over, cloudy, purple, kingdom, domes. Okay, so see how the first letter of each word is underlined and bolded? That's to remind you that each letter goes with the first letter of each of the groups on the left. Okay, so we have species, genus, family, order, class, phylum, kingdom, and domain. Correlating to, or kind of linking to, or making sense from silly, goats, fly, over, cloudy, purple, kingdom, domes. Does that make sense? So that's just a fun way to remember those first letters, which will then help you remember those words. Okay, let's move on. So today we're going to focus on like house dogs, okay? So pet dogs for an example for learning taxonomy, okay? So for this lesson, we're going to focus on our pet doggies, okay? So remember, we start at the biggest to the smallest or the smallest to the biggest. Okay? So today we're going to start at the bottom and work to the top. So first we have domain. Domain holds all life on Earth. Okay, so you can kind of think of it like it's giving all living things just a big hug. Okay, it's holding everybody in their arms. Now, you see down on the bottom box there, it's got bacteria, it's got plants, it's got animals, it's got everything, okay? That's the domain. So domain holds all life on Earth. Then above that, we have kingdom. Now, kingdom is our most broad grouping system. That means it's our biggest group system, okay? And there's 3. But the one we're going to focus on today is Animalia. Animalia means animal, okay? So we're in the kingdom Animalia for pet dogs. Now we're going to go over to the right again and go to phylum. Okay, remember phylum starts with a P and it divides the kingdom based on shared body parts. So, phylum for dogs is Chordata, which I know is silly because it starts with a CH and normally that makes a ch sound. But in this case, it makes a k sound, like a K. And it's Chordata, which equals vertebrates. Vertebrates is another word for animals with spines. Okay? So, for pet dogs, right now we're at kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata. Okay? Now let's move on to class. Class takes those phylums and groups them further based on broader traits. Okay? So, the class that a dog is in is Mammalia. Okay? Mammalia. So, what does mammalia mean? Mammalia is mammals. Mammals are a class of warm-blooded, air-breathing, vertebrate animals distinguished by having hair or fur, a diaphragm, a 4-chambered heart, and mammary glands that produce milk to nourish their young. So, mammals give birth to live young and feed their young milk. Okay, your mom did this to you. Now, all mammals have hair or fur at some point in their lives as well. Okay, isn't that cool? So now we have kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, and class Mammalia. Now let's move on to order. Order divides the class based on similarities, like what they eat and other things. So, for a dog, the order is Carnivora, which is meat eaters. Okay, the carnivores, right? We've learned about carnivores. So, Carnivora is meat eaters. Isn't that neat? So, where are we at now? For dogs, kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Carnivora. Excellent job, guys. Now let's move over to family. Families are a group of life forms that share a common trait. Okay? So the family for dogs, for house dogs, is Canidae, which means canids, which is just another word for dog-like creatures. Okay, so like wolves, foxes, jackals, things like that. Okay, very good. Now let's go through it again, all the way to where we are. Kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Carnivora, family Canidae. Amazing. You guys are awesome. Now let's go to genus. Genus is a group that shares a common ancestor. So for a dog, that means Canis, is the genus, okay? Canis means dog, okay? So in that group, we have wolves, dogs, jackals, and other dog or wolf-like beings, okay? So where are we at now? Let's go through it again. Kingdom, Animalia. Phylum, Chordata. Class, Mammalia. Order, Carnivora. Family, Canidae. Genus, Canis. That's right. Okay, now last one and the most important is species. So this is the most specific grouping on the main 8 levels. Okay? So the species for a house dog is lupus. Isn't that cool? Lupus means wolf. Lupus. So when we're talking about lupus, it's pretty cool because lupus actually comes from the Latin for wolf, okay? Did you know that lupus is from lupa? And lupa is the wolf that originally took care of Romulus and Remus in a Roman myth, okay? So when we learn about ancient Rome, you'll be able to remember that. Isn't that the coolest thing? So let's go through all of it together, okay? We have domain, which holds all life on earth. Then we have kingdom, Animalia, phylum, Chordata, class, Mammalia, order, Carnivora, family is Canidae, genus, Canis, and species, Lupus. You guys are amazing. Okay, let's keep going. Why do we have 2 different names? Scientific names versus common names. The common name is what regular people say, like dog. The scientific name uses 2 words, the genus and the species together, Canis lupus. This is called binomial nomenclature. Okay, so pronounce it with me. Bi-no-me-o. Nome en clature. Binomial nomenclature. Great job, guys. For a dog, the scientific name is Canis lupus. The first word, canis, is capitalized, which means it has a big C. The second word, lupus, is lowercase, which means it has a little l. Both words are written in italics in books. Now, see how the word italics is leaning to the right? That's how the binomial nomenclature will be written for any species in books. Does that make sense? That's so that we know it's different than a regular common name, okay? So, for example, we have our dog. Now, on the left side, we have dog with his common name, dog, okay? Now, this is like if, let's say his name is Mikey, okay? Now, on the right-hand side, we have Mikey, but with his scientific name, Canis lupus. Now, if his name is Mikey for common name, then his scientific name would be like his full name. So, like Michael Smith, okay? Does that make sense? It's just a little bit more specific. Good job, guys. Let's keep going. What is a taxon? So remember, this concept is called taxonomy. Now, a taxon is each individual level in those 8 boxes that we learned about. Remember that? So, let's say it together. Taxon. For example, we have Carnivora is the taxon at the order level. And Canidae is the taxon at the family level. So subspecies is a tiny extra group, all right, with the taxonomy. You'll notice it wasn't on our 8 levels. But subspecies is when sometimes scientists make an even smaller group inside a species called a subspecies. Now, a subspecies is still the same species and can have babies together, but they are a little different because of where they live or how they act. So the dog is a subspecies called Canis lupus familiaris. It's called familiaris because they're familiar, right? They're our friends. They live with us. So everybody in that picture up there, from the Yorkie to the St. Bernard, are all the same subspecies. Isn't that neat? Now, for an example, here we have a wolf, which is a gray wolf over here on the left. That is Canis lupus. And then on the right side is our corgi called Canis lupus familiaris. Now, see, even though they're the same species, they're different subspecies. Now we're going to go to our last thing, which is what I want you to do at home now, is find an animal near you, either a pet or a wild animal, or even just an animal that you're really interested in. And I want you to research the taxonomy for them, okay? So that could be your pet hamster, or a squirrel outside, or even a macaw from the Amazon rainforest. It could be whatever you want it to be. But I want you to see how the taxonomy differs between them and a dog. All right? Thanks, guys. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you at our next one.